Lamar Jackson sounded off on the Baltimore Ravens and got real on Mark Andrews after the team's devastating season-ending playoff loss to the Buffalo Bills. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcoming to another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravenswire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day, free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and also in audio form, where you can follow along and subscribe as well. We're a 5-day-a-week daily Ravens podcast, and that does not change even with the offseason. 5 days per week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. First full day, I guess, of the Ravens offseason, and it does not feel good to be here. Ravens lose 27-25 to the Bills in the Divisional Round in pretty devastating fashion, I would say. Seemed like they got off to a fast start, and then they were out of it, and then they were back in it, and then, of course, they were out of it at the end. And we're going to talk about everything here today. Lamar Jackson, after the game, he sounded off and also got real on Mark Andrews. We'll get into all of that in the first part of the show, and then we'll also dive into some of the other comments Ravens players had to say. We'll talk about if the Ravens will ever get over the hump in the second part of the show and kind of the narrative surrounding Lamar Jackson. And this is coming out on Monday morning, so I haven't even heard any of the national media points on it yet, but we will talk about what we've heard so far on social media. Then finally, we'll talk about what went wrong with the Bills, talk a little offseason, although not too much offseason. We'll get into that as the week and obviously the weeks go on here on the show. I do want to start with this, though, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in the final part of the show. It's a tough way to end the year. You know, I'm devastated. I'm sure everyone listening is devastated. Well, maybe if you're a Bills fan or someone else who's not a Ravens fan listening, maybe you're not. But all Baltimore is devastated right now. But this was a really fun season for me in particular, and I hope a lot of other people had a lot of fun this year watching this Ravens team. Obviously, doesn't really mean a lot when they don't go far and don't make to the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl, but just for me personally, growing this show professionally and just personally for the show as well, I hit a lot of goals this year. That doesn't happen without the support of everybody in audio form and in video form and all over the place. So thank you for all that support. And again, we're not going anywhere here on Locked On Ravens. We're 5 days a week, even in the off season. So be sure to join that ride or continue on that journey with me as we talk Ravens and try to figure out how this team can get over the hump. But Lamar Jackson, he sounded off after the game, and obviously Lamar was upset. He was mad. He was angry, and you wouldn't guess anything other than that because Lamar is a competitor. He wants to win, and, you know, that's just who Lamar is. And so, first of all, he was asked a question about Mark Andrews, and he said, of course, we're a team in the first half. I had 2 costly turnovers, me not holding the safety, me just knowing the coverage and knowing it was man coverage. I threw a BS interception. It was 7-7 at the time. I believe they scored after that. We battled back, fumbled a snap, trying to make something happen. It was like an RPO play, so I couldn't really throw the ball to Likely because the offensive line was down the field. So I tried to make something happen, tried to squeeze the ball, it slipped out of my hand. They picked it up, got some yards, and I think that led to points for them. So it's a team effort out there. He said, Mark's been busting his behind. He's been making plays on the field for us. We came up short, and like I've been saying all season, here's what Lamar really sounded off right here. Every time we're in situations like this, turnovers play a factor, penalties play a factor, and then he, got really explicit with the language, and I think that just showed the passion Lamar had here. He said, it's 9 turnovers. We can't have that stuff, although this is a family-friendly show. So I'm substituting stuff for the expletive word there. We can't have that stuff. That's why we lost the game. Hold on to the effing ball. I'm sorry for my language. That stuff is annoying. I'm tired of this stuff. I mean, Lamar, he was sounding off. And look, this is the competitor in Lamar. This is Lamar feeling like he let the team down and him being frustrated with the fact that he has been here before. And he talked about that, where he said that he's tired of coming up short, and it's frustrating for him. And how he has been in this situation and how he and this team has not been able to go there. He talked about how he and Josh had an awesome moment after the game. And, he said, I have to get over this because we're right there. I'm tired of being right there. We need to punch it in. We need to punch in that ticket. We have to get right in the offseason. This is going to be the narrative surrounding the Ravens and Lamar. Now, I don't think Lamar deserves all the blame for this game. I want to say that. There were two really costly turnovers that he had early. We're going to acknowledge that. We're going to say that happened. We can't just throw that away. Lamar was a reason why the Ravens lost this game. But I thought that he played a much cleaner second half. I thought that he, on that final drive, was pretty magnificent. And again, like if the turnovers don't happen in the first half, okay, maybe we're talking about a different ball game. There are a lot of things that could have gone different. But I'm not going to sit here and say Lamar was the only reason they lost that game. Mark Andrews was a big reason they lost that game. The coaching, Todd Monken, not Harbaugh in particular, but Todd Monken and the play calling, I thought, was not up to standard in this one. But Lamar is somebody that he takes a lot of pride in being able to lead his team, and he is a perfectionist, right? It feels that way. So whenever he makes those mistakes, obviously he does own up to it, which I think is really big of him. And I think that, look, he kind of took his licks in the press conference, right? He admitted to his mistakes. He answered all the questions, I thought, admirably. He, took ownership. And you see some quarterbacks do that and some quarterbacks don't do that. And, I give Lamar a lot of credit. He said the takeaways from the season and the game was protect the ball. Like I said, we're driving the ball smoothly all game. I don't think we punted tonight. It was the 3 turnovers that got us off the field. So if you protect the ball, we're not even having these conversations, and you guys aren't even having those types of questions for me. You have to do a better job protecting the ball. Then we'll be on the right track. And this is a fact. The reason the Ravens lost this game, if you've been with me on Locked On Ravens every day, I talked about this. When the Ravens play their game and don't get in their own way, they can win the Super Bowl. They're the best team in the league, it feels like. But when they do, it's just crippling mistake after crippling mistake. And the Ravens didn't lose any games this season in blowout fashion. It always felt like either the Ravens were blowing people out, or they were winning close games, or they were losing close games that they had chances to win in, but they just couldn't get out of their own way. And the Ravens in this game, just for context a little bit, they outgained the Bills by almost 150 total yards. They had more rushing yards than the Bills. They had more passing yards than the Bills. They averaged more yards per pass. They averaged more yards per play. They averaged more yards per carry. They went 7 of 10 on third down. They went 1 of 1 on fourth down. They had 3 more first downs than the Bills. And then you look at the turnover category, and it's the loudest thing on the box score stat sheet. 3-0. The Ravens made the mistakes and the Bills didn't. And that was the difference. It's a 2-point loss. And that's where the mistakes come in. It's not just the turnovers. I am talking overall mistakes. Obviously, the Andrews drop on the 2-point conversion, which we will dive into. The 2-point call the first time, I thought, was a really bad call from Todd Monken. I don't really disagree with the second call. It worked. I mean, Rashad Bateman said a nice, it was a rub route essentially, and Mark was able to get open and to throw. There's been a lot of controversy on the throw. I don't think it was a bad throw. I mean, was it a tad low? I don't even think so. I thought it was a fine throw. I just don't think Mark was able to secure it. I see a lot of people blaming Lamar for the throw, and I'm like, he hit him in the chest, stomach area. I don't really know what else you want from Lamar in that situation. That is on Mark, in my opinion. But Lamar also talked a little bit about Mark after the first question. He was asked if he talked to Mark after the game. He said, yes, I talked to Mark on the sideline, but I'm just as hurt as Mark. It's not his fault. All of us played a factor in the game. It's a team effort. We're not going to put that on Mark because he's been battling all season. He's been doing all the great things he's been doing all season. It doesn't always go our way. We want it to, but at the moment in time, it's not going our way. We need to figure it out. And that was kind of the message from the entire team. John Harbaugh, Isaiah Likely, everybody was talking about how they're not going to put it on Mark. And Mark, put his heart out there on the line for the team this season and recovered from, this is me talking here. He recovered from a very rough early season stretch and played great football up until this game. He was a huge reason the Ravens lost. There are going to be conversations about his future, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit in the second part of the show here. But it is not all on Mark, right? You can say, is Mark the most to blame, or is Lamar the most to blame, or is Monken the most to blame, or is whatever is the most. There are differing opinions on that. But this is a team game, like Lamar said, like Harbaugh said. And it's difficult because trying to process this loss, it'd be easier if it wasn't the same old Ravens. If you caught the live show after the game and there were a lot more raw emotions in that from me, obviously this is coming out a couple hours after the game. Well, more like 8 hours after the game ended. It's taken a little time for me to process, but we're getting there, right? And again, the emotions are super high for everybody here, but the Ravens, this is their reputation. They're a good regular season team, and they falter in the playoffs when it matters. That has been the John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson pairing narrative, and they can't do anything about that until a year from now. The Ravens could go 17-0 during the regular season, and not a soul would care. Not a soul. They could be the most dominant regular season team ever, and no one would care because the narrative, and it's not wrong, they have not performed up to expectation. This to me was Lamar's, when everybody's talking about, oh, Lamar can't perform in the playoffs, this, that, and the other. And that's a whole other loaded conversation, which I think Lamar has gotten overly criticized for that. Lamar had the 2 bad turnovers, right? We're not going to excuse him for that. But I think he recovered. And, it's difficult because it's a full 60 minutes. You're not just going to throw away the turnovers and say they didn't happen, as we talked about earlier. But this Ravens team has a lot of soul searching to do in the offseason, and it's the beginning of now a long offseason period for Baltimore. They're going to have to make some tough decisions, and we're going to see how this team looks at the beginning of next season because there will be some changes. Now, how big those changes will be, I don't know yet, but obviously we'll discuss that a little bit during this show, but as I mentioned, as the weeks go on. Coming up, though, we will talk a little bit about Mark Andrews and if the Ravens will ever get over this hump, dive a little bit more into what some of the Ravens players and coaches said after the game, the media narratives on social media, as well as some interesting stats about the Ravens, some which you'll like and others that you won't. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by LinkedIn. Growing your small business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to hiring the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. I know from experience how important it is to make the right hiring decisions. Having access to insights like what skills candidates have, how they're connected to your network, that helps you feel confident when pulling the trigger. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And the show is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the game, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot similar to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, whether you're looking for a flex play, to boost your payout, or want to cash out quickly. PrizePicks has got you covered. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast. This week, I had Lamar Jackson for more than 230 passing yards and Derrick Henry for more than 1 touchdown, so it didn't work out great for me. So easy to use, and I love how fast the payouts are. I've gotten paid out in as little as 15 minutes when my picks hit, plus weekly promos like Taco Tuesday discounts to add even more value to my lineups. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks right in your game. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks right in your game. Back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you after the Ravens season ends at the hands of the Buffalo Bills, 27-25 in the divisional round. It's a really tough way and chillingly familiar ending to the way that this Ravens season went down. It feels a lot like all the other Ravens seasons that have ended this disappointingly in terms of the Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh pairing era. And, we can all say that the Ravens will have a shot next season, which they absolutely will. But that doesn't make the opportunity they missed hurt any less this year and right now. So, a lot of players had a lot of interesting things to say, and, we heard a lot of different messages after the game. It's going to be a different team next season. That was a big message from the Ravens and a couple of players on the roster. John Harbaugh said he was proud of his team for everything they accomplished this year. And just my 2 cents on that whole situation. I mentioned this on the live show that we did after the game last night, but I believe John Harbaugh will be back next season, whether you are on the page of firing him or not. That's a whole different, opinionated conversation. I'm just saying what I think will happen is I think the Ravens will keep John Harbaugh. It's weird. I actually feel more confident they're going to keep him this year as opposed to last year when they lost in the AFC Championship, which is crazy to say, but I do. And I think that next year, this is going to be it. That's it for John Harbaugh. That's the do or die year where if they can't get the job done, like I am officially right now, you can clip this if you want to, and you can come back to it in a year. Hopefully more than a year when the Ravens win the Super Bowl. But if it doesn't happen, you can come back to it. If the Ravens don't get to at least the AFC Championship game next season, my prediction is John Harbaugh gets fired. That's the cap. Because you cannot continue doing this same dance over and over again. And I think John Harbaugh is a good coach. I've been very clear for very long here on this show, if you've been listening to me every day, that I think John Harbaugh is a good coach. And there are 25 teams that will line up out the door to immediately bring in John if, the Ravens were to move on. But that doesn't mean that a fit is right at a certain time for a coach or for a player or for whatever it is. And what I mean by that is sometimes it's just time. Sometimes it's just time. And next season, if they cannot get back to the AFC Championship game, we're not here for wild card wins. We're not here for divisional round losses. Right? That's not what we're here for. Right? The Ravens are there to win a Super Bowl, to get to a Super Bowl. Let's get there first. Right? Let's get there. They haven't been back since they won in 2012, 2013. That's a long time. And a lot of coaches don't have that runway that John Harbaugh, and if you want to bring Mike Tomlin into that conversation, sure. But this game in particular with John Harbaugh, I'm not blaming this on John Harbaugh. The thing that I will blame on John Harbaugh, if we are going to play that game, is that the guys weren't ready to play in a couple different aspects, and that obviously does fall back on the coach. But I think the halftime messaging was very clear. I think that they were a much better team after halftime. The issue is that they dug themselves too deep into a hole, and that is what I mean by not having the guys ready to play consistently. The Ravens went out there and scored on the first drive, right? That was good. They looked ready there. But then that same energy on defense was not matched, and you can talk about Zach Orr there, but I'm not going to place blame on Zach Orr for this. I mean, it was rough. There were some penalties, which, that's a different conversation. But I just feel like Harbaugh will enter the next year with his seat warm, and if they don't do well, I mean, look, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And Lamar is going to go into year 8. Lamar is going to be an 8-year veteran next year. 8-year veteran. That is crazy. 8 years. He's 28 years old. He's going to be 29 by the time next season is. And you have to be able to capitalize on this. Now, what does that look like? Will the Ravens ever be able to get over that hump? I know there are a lot of conversations, and we'll get more into this in the final part of the show, but I do want to address the whole Mark Andrews conversation because there is one and there will be one this offseason. Essentially, for those that, don't know, Mark Andrews has a $16.9 million cap hit for the Ravens next season, right? That is the 4th highest scheduled on the team. 4th highest behind Lamar Jackson, Marlon Humphrey, and Roquan Smith. If the Ravens were to cut Mark Andrews, they would save $11 million. 11. That's a lot of money. That can bring in an impact player, especially the way the Ravens structure their contracts. That could bring in an impact guy. Do the Ravens feel comfortable and confident enough in Isaiah Likely to move on from Mark Andrews? I feel confident in Isaiah Likely. Isaiah Likely is a tight end 1. If the Ravens do decide to keep Mark Andrews, next year is going to be the last year those two are together. That's the hard cap on the Andrews-Likely tandem. because Isaiah Likely's a free agent after next season, and he is going to get paid. If the Ravens do not do it, another team will. He is a star. He is a stud, and he's going to get paid like a tight end one, and he's going to get paid very handsomely. The Ravens will have to decide between those two. And $11 million is a lot of money. It's a lot of money to free up on the cap. And considering you're going to get Marcus Williams money off the books and a couple other guys off the books, there will be room for this team to improve. But, then you are losing I still think despite the game Mark had, he's a great tight end, right? I don't think that this game should diminish what he was able to do over the course of the season. Really rough game, and deserves criticism for it in a lot of it. But the way that Lamar and Mark have established that connection coming into the lead together in 2018 and that street ball connection they have, that just doesn't grow on trees. So the Ravens will have a tough decision to make. But if they do decide to move on, they do have a star in waiting, I guess, in Isaiah Likely. Now, some of the media comments about Lamar Jackson, they're obviously the ones Emmanuel Acho kind of told on himself, for being honest, talking about how, Lamar, get ready for slander for 12 months. And, that whole ridiculous thing after the game. First thing that comes to his mind when Mark drops that pass is, Lamar, get ready, like bragging about it, essentially, which, again, just super cringy and, whatever. We don't have to talk about that. But I think that we saw a lot of other media people kind of come to Lamar's defense a little bit. Like Stephen A. Smith had a comment on Lamar, and he ended up, actually having a very chill take on Lamar Jackson when it comes to Stephen A. Smith standards, if you want to call it that, and said, this is not on Lamar. He did his job. Unfortunately, the great Mark Andrews, who hasn't lost the fumbles in 2019, doesn't drop passes, got stripped for a fumble, and then dropped the 2-point conversion that would have tied the game with under 2 minutes left. Tragic. Appreciate the accountability on Lamar's part. Right thing to do. Kudos to him, but it's on Andrews. So sad. The guy's been great for years. Mr. Reliable. What a horrible time for this to happen to him, but it happened. So that's Stephen A. on social media. We're going to see what he says when he goes on the shows he's going to be on today, but I thought and that was kind of the sentiment of like, Lamar had the turnovers, but he executed massively on that final drive and recovered, and the turnovers were rough, but second half he was a much better player for the most part. It was just, Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson connection giveth, and Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews connection taketh away. Felt like Lamar was the big reason in the first half, and then it ended up being Mark in the second half, and that was the tandem that really contributed to this loss on the offensive side of the ball. Again, wasn't thrilled with Todd Monken's play calling in this game. And if you've been listening to me every day, you know that I'm not, I've been impressed with Todd, but not to the level that I would like to have been through 2 years. And that is not me talking in hindsight. That is me speaking. And I've had that opinion where the Ravens will either start too slow or they'll start fast and then kind of fall off a cliff. Henry had 16 carries in this game. I thought he could have had a little bit more. I'm not overly complaining about that. I'm not going to, fry Todd Monken for 4 carries or something like that. But the not running on second and goal from the 2 was a killer. The 2-point conversion first call was bad. So, just mistake after mistake after mistake. Derrick Henry had a big drop. Mark had the other drop. Like it was bad. And thought the defense, again, this is the second year in a row where the Ravens have lost a game where the defense struggles in the first half and tightens up in the second half. Just 6 points allowed in the second half for Baltimore. This coming after the championship game last season where the Ravens defense did not allow a single point in the second half. So shout out to Zach Orr and the defense for getting that job done. And coming up in the final part of the show, we will talk a little bit more about what went wrong against the Bills, more things of what these players are saying, and some of those stats as well. Stay tuned. Lots to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings, whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs. FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Allstriker still rocking out with you here on this Monday. I guess it's kind of a sad rock out. We're jamming, but it's not to to a happy song, to a sad song as the Ravens, their season is over. Appreciate everybody for being here with me on Locked On Ravens, whether you're an everyday or your first time into the show or you're somewhere in between. We're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast. And again, that does not change in the offseason. I've been doing this since 2019. I have not missed a weekday episode in those years. This is episode 1426 consecutively for me on the weekdays, and we're only getting started here. As I said in the first part of the show, this was a really big, monumental season for me on Locked On Ravens. Hit multiple goals in both video and audio form, and I couldn't have that without the support of everybody in the communities that we've built up here over the years. Audio, video, social media, subtext. It's been incredible. I can't thank everybody enough from the bottom of my heart for sticking with me here. I know that some people don't tune in as much during the offseason. I'd love if you did, but I get that that's just a natural flow of things. Some people, you tune in every single day, and I appreciate that more than you'll ever know. But regardless of how often you tune in, just know that, your support means the world to me. And I promise that we're doing a full audio, video, background, everything revamped this offseason. We're going to change a lot of what we do here. Not content-wise. Like, content's going to get better as it grows. But, just going to do some things to improve the show, nuances of it, and I'm really excited for that. It'll probably be gradual changes over the course of the next couple of weeks and couple of months, but I'm really excited for all of that. But enough of that. Let's get back into Ravens football, because that's what we do here on Locked On Ravens. We talk about Ravens football, the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty, whatever it is, we talk about it. And I think this offseason is going to be one of the biggest offseasons in this franchise's history. Obviously, I think the Lamar offseason was big, and last year was big as well. But this team, to me, has one more year before contracts start getting pretty wonky and pretty funky. The unrestricted free agents, right? Well, we'll throw restricted. We'll throw just all free agents in here for the Ravens, so we can have a whole perspective of this. Here are the Ravens free agents: Ronnie Stanley, Patrick McCary, Tre'Davious White, Patrick Ricard, Nelson Aguilar, Malik Harrison, Josh Jones, Brent Urban, Josh Johnson, Steven Sims, Deontay Hardy, Chris Board, Ben Cleveland, Brandon Stevens, Christian Welch, Trayvon Mullen, Tylen Wallace. You have Ardarius Washington and Christian Matthew as restricted free agents, and Owen Wright is an exclusive rights free agent. So the big ones that I just listed off there is Ronnie Stanley, Brandon Stevens, Patrick McCary, Pat Ricard. Tylen Wallace is a name that I think a lot of people want to see back. It's not a lot of names. Like, they're going to have to make a decision on Stanley. I think he played really well and was really healthy. So, he bet on himself, and I think that bet paid off. Brandon Stevens, I personally would not re-sign Brandon. I'd move in a different direction there. I think they need another shutdown corner to pair with Marlon and Nate Wiggins. But this is a year where the Ravens can go and they can add some new pieces here. Like, they can add through the draft. They can add maybe one or two high-impact players, especially with some of that money coming off the books. But then 2026 gets dicey because Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry, Kyle Van Noy, Travis Jones, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kohler, Odafe Owe. We've got to pick up both club options, team options on Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum. That's a lot of money that is going to have to be placed into some of those guys. Now, my anticipation is that Mark does not return. I'm not sure Derek returns after next season. He would be 32 in this scenario. So, they'd have to choose between Isaiah and Mark. I don't know if Travis Jones comes back. I think they'd be foolish not to re-sign him, but we'll see what the money looks like. Odafe Owe, what will that contract look like? And then 2027, you'll have to sign those two guys in Tyler Linderbaum and Kyle Hamilton to extensions. Marlon Humphrey will be a free agent. Rashad Bateman will be back on the free agent market. You have to pick up Zay Flowers, his option. That's a lot of money that's going to be tied up there. So I know we're looking way, way ahead, but I think that this offseason is a prime opportunity to where you're not. This is the first offseason in what feels like a little while where the Ravens aren't going to lose a ton of free agents in the offseason. Where obviously last year was, a really big year for them in terms of losing free agents. And, they had a lot of other guys like the other year. Ben Powers left and Calais Campbell left and Justin Houston left. And like those guys were leaving in 2023, 2022, was not a huge year for them. They had to capitalize on that. They did in 2023 was good. So it just feels like this is going to be a really important offseason for Baltimore, as I've said. And I feel like they have to capitalize in multiple different ways. Now, some stats to throw out here about this Ravens team. Some of them are tough. The Ravens have not won a playoff game when trailing by 10 points at the half in the Lamar Jackson era. The only other winless team in that same time span is the Raiders. But you also have a good thing here saying the 2018 to 2024 Ravens now join the 1999-2005 Colts is the only other team in NFL history with 80-plus wins in a 7-season span without reaching the Super Bowl. That's not the good part, though. The good news for Ravens fans, the Colts finally broke through and won a Super Bowl the following season. So, people are kind of hoping that can be the year for the Ravens next season. But we can't keep saying next year's the year, right? We can't keep saying that next year is the year. It just... we can't do it. So, you see all the mistakes, the interceptions, the drops, the bad snap by Linderbaum, the fumble by Lamar. This team's identity is going to be it's mistakes in the playoffs. They shudder. They shut down. They can't get it done. And, I hate to say it as someone who covers this team and roots for it, but it's true. It's true. This is what they are. This is their identity. And you hate to see it be that way, but we're not going to sit here and deny the truth. So it is unfortunate. Other things that happened in the game, just for context on why Baltimore couldn't get the job done. Early, the Ravens couldn't get off the field on third down. I thought they did. Under 50% for Buffalo on third down was fine, 5 for 11, but it just felt like late the Bills caught momentum. The Bills held the ball for 3 more minutes than the Ravens that are, 4 more minutes. That's not a huge deal, though. There were some bad penalties. Buffalo went 3 for 4 in the red zone. Baltimore went 2 of 3. Josh Allen didn't really have a great game. The Bills weren't really putting in his arm all that much, but 16 to 22 for 127 for Josh Allen. He did not have a touchdown in this game, at least obviously through the air. On the ground, he had 2 of them. But the Ravens holding Josh Allen to 10 carries for 20 yards. A lot of those were short yardage situations, and they were able to convert on those. But, they didn't let Josh run wild with his legs. Again, I thought the defense really did tighten up at halftime, but a couple of key things to me. The Ravens did not punt in this game at all. Jordan Stout did not see the field. The Ravens, every single drive ended in a touchdown or a turnover. That's how crazy this game was. Touchdown or a turnover. The Ravens also had 1 sack for 1 yard. It was that play. It technically counted as a sack. I'm not really saying they had a sack, even though the box score will say they did. The pass rush needs to get more consistent next season, I would say. And a lot of that is probably going to be them bringing in somebody else. I don't think that you can play a guy like David Ojabo in those big situations. I want to shout out Tavius Robinson, though. Tavius Robinson was an absolute beast in this game. I was massively impressed with what Tavius Robinson brought to the table in the run game. Felt like he was always involved in those early down run stops for Baltimore, and that was really big key in this game. But, again, they just couldn't get it done. So we're going to have a lot of coverage for you on Locked On Ravens throughout the offseason. Of course, we'll be back here tomorrow talking more Ravens football. And, would really love if you would come along for the ride here. If you're new to the channel, if you've been here for a while now, if you're an everydayer, you've been here before, I'd love if you continue on that journey with me. We'll be here for you in the offseason. I know people take some time away from Ravens content after the Ravens lose in the playoffs, and I understand that, but whenever you decide to come back, we will be right here for you on Locked On Ravens. That's all I have for you here today. Coming up tomorrow, we're talking more Ravens content, Ravens coverage, and just continuing to kind of do the season wrap-up as we transition into the offseason for Baltimore. So be sure to hit that like and subscribe button on the way out in video form. Follow along and subscribe in audio form, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.